in Dungeons & Dragons, there are certain times where you get advantage and disadvantage. But this only works in one certain way, and if you have advantage and disadvantage on the same thing, then they just cancel each other out. But if you want to make this a little bit more interesting, try this house rule out as we go beyond the screen. Greetings all, and welcome to Beyond the Screen. I am your humble DM, Tim, and today a house rule that I came up with to make advantage and disadvantage make a little bit more sense, at least in my mind. This came about from one of my players saying one day that, well, there's no point me not doing it because I can't have disadvantage twice. And I thought to myself, well, why not? If two things are causing great difficulty, why would just having one thing in your benefit cancel out those two negative effects? And so what I came up with using my Warhammer 40k thinking is essentially what you do is you turn advantage and disadvantage into a ladder or a tier system. So if you have, for example, two disadvantages, so say you're a small creature using an oversized weapon, so that's, it's too heavy for you, you have disadvantage on this thing, plus you are, say, grappled, or something else is causing you disadvantage. If, say, this player happens to be a barbarian and they use their reckless attack, they get advantage. Well, normally, having two levels of disadvantage, the 1 point of advantage would cancel that out. But in this instance, what you can do is, if you have the ladder system, they need to have multiple advantages in order to cancel out multiple disadvantages. Now, I know this sounds complicated, but looking at it from a distance, it really isn't. And at least to my mind, I think this actually makes advantage and disadvantage mean more. So let's go back to our example. So if you have an oversized weapon, so you have disadvantage on using that, plus you are restrained, so you have disadvantage on the ability to use the weapon. What you could do to counteract that is, you could reckless attack, which gives you it removes the single tier of that, plus one of your companions could jump in from behind and give flanking, so that cancels out both stats. So boom, you have two positive, two negative. You're at 0. It's a flat roll. If something else comes along where, like, say that one of your friends knocks the person prone, so you're now at advantage to hit them. You reckless attack for the additional advantage, and then your other party member gets into a flanking position. You now have 3 positives and 2 negatives. You have 1 positive. You're in the advantage point. It doesn't change the dice rolls, so you don't get, multiple advantage rolls. Your advantage and disadvantage rolls still remain the same. So you could have 5 disadvantages placed upon you. It's still going to be 2 dice, pick the lowest. Or you could have 5 positives and no negatives. It's still going to be 2 dice and pick the highest. So the mechanic of utilizing advantage and disadvantage doesn't change. It's just what applies to create advantage and disadvantage is what comes into it. And to me, it just makes things make more sense, and it also means that it's going to make your players think more about certain situations. So, for example, if they have a large weapon that gives them disadvantage, I'm using this example because this is literally the example, the rule situation that made me contemplate this rule. If they have an oversized weapon and they have the ability to have advantage on any attack that they want using a special ability, then there's no reason for them not to do it. So they're always going to do it. So having this disadvantage placed upon them isn't really a disadvantage. It's just it just cancels itself out. And in that sort of instance, having multiple things working against them really should not be cancelled out by a single thing working for them. But if this is something that's been happening to you, where your player's going, oh, there's no reason for me not to do this because I can't have double disadvantage, well, maybe you could introduce double disadvantage or double advantage into your games and see whether it mixes up the mechanics a little bit for you. So, thank you all for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. I have been your humble DM, Tim, and come back for more looks beyond the screen. Bye!